Good afternoon. My name is Dorothy Small, and I'm one of the volunteer leaders with the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priest. And I am introducing our keynote speaker, and her name is Donna DeNomme. And Donna shares how abuse in a religious setting differs from other types of abuse and the special challenges associated with this. And although the experience can be horrific, the healing journey can be one of empowerment, which leads to wild success and sweet happiness. So I'd like to introduce Donna DeNomme.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dorothy. You know, I just wanted to say a couple of words before we play my video presentation, and I will be here at the end of that presentation to answer any questions that come up and perhaps with a few extra comments. You know, preparing something that fits into the container of an hour on such a large topic is always challenging. I've been speaking for many, many years and really enjoy it. And yet this topic is still difficult for me, as I'm sure it is for some of you that are joining us today. I don't know if you all sat in on our opening presentation. It was extraordinary with the report from Colorado. I am from Colorado, and I know Jeb personally and am always moved by his story. So I'm feeling the emotion of that presentation, as many of you may also be feeling. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and honor that. Thank you so much for joining me, and put your questions in the chat. I look forward to dialogue at the end of this presentation. And I think we can go ahead and start that video. And if you want to, you can minimize your little squares for the people attending. There's a place where you can do that. Hide non-video participants. Hello, I'm Donna DeNomme, and today our focus is to embrace healing through true transformation. It's human nature to try to avoid what hurts. When we touch a hot pan, we pull our hand back instinctively, and if we see something disturbing, we might turn away. When we experience great physical pain, the mind tries to forget. It's human nature to try to avoid what hurts. But to remain stuck in your pain is such a disservice to you and your wounding. It means the perpetrators win, for they take away not only your past, but your present and your future. But if we can face our wounds, meet them, listen to what they have to say and learn from them, if we can find a way to comfort them and even own our story, but somehow not be limited by it, now that would be something, wouldn't it? Many of you have shifted from that place of devastation, doing what you could to heal. Some are courageous warriors who have taken to the streets and traveled around the world to stop abuse from happening to our children. You are my heroes and my heroines. SNAP has done so much for our collective healing, demanding to be seen and acknowledged, calling forth the perpetrators to be held accountable, demanding churches and other organizations stop hiding these acts and themselves be accountable, and asking all of society to protect the vulnerable and punish those who prey upon them. SNAP has also brought to the forefront what was all too easy to ignore because of how difficult it was to see, to touch, to feel. A reality that many would think could never happen, but did. Snap helped the world stop turning away from the pain and instead look at it face on. I woke one morning to these words on the forefront of my mind. Despite years of study, professional training, and healing practice, I'm still astounded at the magnitude of pain, the outrageousness of the wounding, mine and others. While preparing for this presentation, I had several nightmares, one about my baby being abducted and gone forever. No matter what I did, I couldn't get her back. I was still triggered and felt the undercurrent of my own loss. So to say, just forget about it, it goes away, or you can completely re-script it, is disrespectful to what each person has been through. But it's what we do with that experience that can be reshaped. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever is going on in your life, this is the call. Come home to yourself. When we look within ourselves, we can learn more about who we are at our very core. Exploration and self-discovery often lead us right into and through our healing, where we might learn to see all of life as significant, including the worst of our experiences. To come into the fullness of our true essential selves, we often find pieces and parts that first need to grow or transform into their fullness. When we find meaning and purpose in our wounds, we honor them with the value they honestly hold, inviting them into the wholeness of who we are. And somehow, when our wounds are seen and heard, they transform into something worthwhile. Those wounds morph into their greatest form, becoming a valuable woven strand in our personal wisdom story. As we come home to ourselves, we reveal who we were really meant to be. The only true story you have is your own. And every thought, every word, every action composes your story. Every experience is a part of that. Not all of us will step out in the same way. We might not protest, legislate for better laws, or speak at the Vatican, but that doesn't mean we will stay in the proverbial corner, suffering the consequences of what has happened to us. No one is ever broken. No one is ever lost. Each of us, each and every single one of us, can work within ourselves to create change. If you or someone you know is stuck in that place of chronic suffering, please know this is not the way it must be. Each one of us that shifts, even a little, toward healing, shifts the overall balance of humanity. Keep moving. Keep moving. The existential purpose is not in your wounding. The essential purpose is found in the healing of those wounds. True transformation shapes your character, leaving your personal mark, your contribution on our world. First and foremost, making a clear statement that says no more shifts us from victim to healer. I know it can feel like an insatiable black hole. The magnitude of the collective pain is astounding. Statistics concerning child abuse are mind-boggling, and the misuse of power morally reprehensible. I shared details about my child abuse with a few close friends and family over 30 years ago, and I quickly learned that my story was unspeakable. Caring people turned their faces from me, became silent, speechless. The man I dated, who had been an altar boy, hyperventilated so badly that I had to calm him down for fear I'd have to rush him to the hospital. In 2010, I found myself back in graduate school, focusing on trauma and healing. During this time, I exposed what was raw and still aching to be seen, heard, and comforted. A lifetime of this horrible secret had eaten away at me from the inside out. Long gone the perpetrators, I was the jailer of my own inner dungeon, perpetuating the trauma by my inability to look at what was difficult to see and burn to the touch. After 2 years of in-depth research, an academic master's project was completed entitled Innocence Prayed and the Soul's Path of Redemption. I further developed that material, shaping it to be less academic, and the hopeful, empowering 8 Keys to Wholeness, Tools for Hope-Filled Healing, was released in 2014, quickly becoming award-winning and internationally published. It draws on decades of work as a licensed spiritual coach, working with many, many clients who had a history of trauma or abuse, as well as a glimpse into my own abuse within the church. I never intended to speak publicly about my abuse. Writing a book that touched on it was difficult enough. Yet again, through an ironic twist, I was interviewed for what I thought was a human interest story and actually ended up being showcased at the top of the hour with breaking news. You don't need to speak publicly about what happened to you, but in some way, each one of us has to clear our throat of the silence that was inflicted upon us. I encourage you to find your voice. It is fundamental to your healing process to speak about what you need, what you want, to ask for help, and to draw in support. Do you remember feeling safe as a child, as a teen, as a young adult? When and where were you safe? What did that feel like? Safety. For me, safety was found at my grandparents' house, especially under the weeping willow tree. While sitting beneath the shielding vines of that huge tree, it felt like no one and nothing could get at me. I could see them before they could see me. I was hidden and safe. And what about now? Do you feel safe now? What does that safety look like? If a safe reality seems foreign or impossible for you, you might consider drawing in help to utilize professional techniques to cultivate that safe space. You see, we can't really just decide or think our way to feeling safe. We might have learned that emotions were not safe or didn't cause the reaction we needed from them. We might have learned that the world is not a safe place. We may have learned that people are not to be trusted. These beliefs are common among abuse survivors. But what do we learn when the abuser is also our spiritual leader? You are the one who is wrong, perhaps even evil. You are tainted, stained with sin. You are not loved. Maybe even God doesn't love you. The clergy had ultimate power over the congregation and spoke the words of truth, and we might have believed them no matter how outrageous their claims. And if the wounding was done in the name of God, well, many of us are angry with God Himself. The worst of the wounding might not be just stealing a child's innocence, but also his faith. We can experience our own hell on earth, or we can learn to stand in the fire of transformation as we reclaim our sacred altar, renewing our faith in what is personally meaningful to us. The deeper you connect with your roots, the further you can stretch out and up as you grow. The stronger your roots, the safer you are, even when you find yourself out on a cliff. Cultivate your sacred roots in whatever way is meaningful for you. Ultimately, recognize that the sacred space lives within you, that no one and nothing can take that away, that we all carry it within us always. People who were abused as children often blame themselves, thinking somehow they could have avoided it or stopped it or made it different. And we may question why God did not intervene. As representatives of God, we might mistakenly believe our perpetrators had the right to do what they did. Whatever we thought as children or adults, it's common for the abused to carry enormous guilt, shame, and pain, believing it is rightfully theirs to carry. Defining your body, your mind, your emotions, your entire self as a sacred space can be a catalyst for loosening the grip of self-defeating and limiting beliefs that may be conscious or even living in the unconscious. This sacred space provides fertile ground to meet and examine our pain. How do you cope with your pain? How do you manage it? Do you acknowledge it and tend to it caringly, or shove it away in a zest to get on with the rest of your life? Wounds don't just go away. They need our attention and care to heal and transform. Do you feel homesick for something you're not sure really exists? A place where your body is accepted and loved, your heart is safe and protected, and your deepest soul is known and understood? That place really does exist, and you might be surprised where you can find it. It is within you. When we no longer place the pain outside of ourselves, making it the other, something separate from us, but rather acknowledge it as a part of us, we can then help it heal. We start by seeing it, truly seeing it. We describe the pain in as much detail as possible, and instead of turning our head away and becoming silent, we dialogue with the pain. We talk to it and learn what it has to say. We learn what it needs from us, and again, who we might ask for help to ease that pain. There's an old Buddhist saying that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Meeting our pain is, by its nature, painful. But doing so stops suffering and enables our personal power to be restored. Personal capability and personal power is our birthright, but to claim it, we must first recognize the places when and where it was lost. We need to see our victim selves and cater to our real wounds. We feel the feelings and grow with them. Remember her? Remember him? Find that inner child that still lives within you. Get in touch with him. Get in touch with her. You know, when I first connected with my inner child, she glared at me and said, "It is you who have kept me locked away all these years." Sometimes it takes a bit of work to gain the trust and befriend those young parts of you. We were made to feel damaged, even broken. We were discarded or perhaps became lost along the way. But the truth is, you were meant to be here. You have a right to be. And no part of us is more precious than our golden girl or golden boy. These are the untapped, unexpressed ones who hold our truest potential. For me, I call her my spinning girl because as a 4-year-old, I love to dance and spin. Often these parts of us are joyful and filled with hope. Reclaiming them can lift our spirits and put fun and laughter in our days. Most people learn how to cultivate happiness as they grow up. For survivors, that might not even be on our radar. You may need to go back and pull that golden child forward so she can help you give yourself permission to be happy. She may have to teach you how. No matter where you've been or what your experience, there was a reason you were born. You are an integral piece of the overall tapestry of life. Your healing and integration matters. My Native American teachers spoke about how souls rally to get into this life. I remember the nuns used to say something similar. Life is precious. So our strength encourages and embraces our weakness. As we find gems in our darkest places. And it takes time, but we can find meaning and purpose in even the most harsh, barren experiences. We make peace with our fragmented pieces and integrate them into our wholeness of being. We recognize and neutralize our painful triggers, deflating their power over us as we quiet the negative, self-defeating chatter, replacing it with something more positive and life-affirming. We learn the fine art of asking questions instead of jumping to fast conclusions. We face our own emotions and allow them appropriate expression instead of pushing them away. We learn the language of our body memory, allowing it too its path of healing. It is not simple, nor easy, but even the slightest movement makes a difference. And as we peel the layers of wounding, we clear many things that no longer serve us. As we unclutter our lives, we free ourselves to answer the callings of our deepest self, to find our soul purpose. And having been honored to witness thousands of clients becoming clear about their soul purpose, I can say that sometimes it is a role or a direction in life, and sometimes it is simply a way of being, like being more loving or compassionate or happy, letting go of the rigidity and moving into the fluidity of life and all it has to offer. So we can awaken with the promise of each day as we recognize the true gift of life and our potential for unwrapping the many layers of who we are and what we have to experience. And I believe our potential is actually stretching toward us, just longing for us to grasp a hold of it and bring it into life expression. We can savor this human existence, and by doing so, elevate it to even more of what it can be. You know, I often have people ask me how we managed this trick photography. This is a picture of my brother Daryl, 10 days after emergency brain surgery. He had come from sea level in Connecticut to visit during his recuperation, and we traveled up to Pikes Peak, Colorado, elevation 14,115 feet above sea level. I see this image as a testimony to human resilience and human drive. We each have an innate impetus not only to survive, but to thrive. So, what is your wisdom story? Do you already know what it is, or are you still discovering it? Can you clear your throat to open your voice? Can you find and draw strength from your sacred roots as you recognize that that sacred space lives within you now and always? Do you try to understand your emotions, respect your body, and neutralize your triggers so you may move through panic to find inner peace? When you stop denying parts of you, you can see and understand the wisdom they have to offer. Are you willing to move in and through the heat of your personal healing to reach for true transformation as you shift from what happened to you into what you can become in spite of it, or maybe even because of it? In this time of a drastically shifting world, we desperately need people like you and me, because we've been down the rabbit hole and back, and we know something about a reality that is suddenly taken from us, causing us to have to create anew. Take all of the time you need, honoring your process, because no two are exactly the same. Own your story, all of it, as you evolve it into a worthwhile wisdom story. C.S. Lewis says, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Whether you believe in God or have lost faith in a higher power, you can still see the value of pain to rouse us into action. Sometimes it's through embracing our own darkness that we reveal our greatest light. Henry Miller said, one's destination is never a place, but rather a new way of seeing things. If you can't find the light, be the light. You are the light. The essence of life itself expresses through you, and what is essential and most precious you carry within you. What are your heart's desires? What are your soul's longings? Live from that place of heart and soul. Can you feel your potential stretching to connect? Right now, what do you wish to magnetize toward you? Or what do you want to magnetize up and out of you? What innermost parts of your character can you still reveal? The most magnificent soul creativity is about realizing and expressing your divine potential. Do not leave your longings unattended. Do not let them lie dormant within you. Find a way to activate and nurture them. There is a part of our healing that calls us to be of service in some way, to be that light for others. My alma mater calls it for the sake of tending the soul of the world. The time is now. We need each of us doing our part for the overall collective. Each me helps to hold up the greater we. What are you contributing? How can you be a beneficial presence in our world? I have to speak gratitude for our leaders, organizers, mentors, and volunteers, active in SNAP, present and past. Thank you for who you are and all you do. And the healing we do within us ripples forward and affects not only our family and our community, but the collective consciousness of the entire world. So your individual work is a path of high service too. Lao Tzu says, if you want to awaken all of humanity, then awaken all parts of yourself. If you want to eliminate all suffering of the world, then eliminate all parts that are dark and negative. Truly, the greatest gift you can give is that of your own self-transformation. The call of our time is to transform old dark sludge into new potential, and the only true story you have is your own. Be unshakable in your core foundation, nurtured by your very nature. Shift into congruent alignment with your innermost character, realizing and expressing the potential that can be. Recognize all of your life as your sacred path and all you do as the contribution you make through your own unique soul creativity. Sherpas are helpers who carry the heavy load up the mountain. I have been referred to as a spiritual Sherpa because I help people carry the physical, mental, and emotional load, past and present, up the proverbial mountain. Find someone to help you, or reach out and help someone else. We all benefit. 8 essential keys, tools for hope-filled healing and expansive evolutionary growth. Coming home to yourself, a 30-day invitation, and a rite, W-R-I-T-E, of passage are 3 of our online programs. I hope you found some value in what I shared today. I would like to close our time together by asking you to take a nice, slow, conscious breath. Breathe in, breathe out. Coming home to who you are and owning your wisdom story. Be more, have more, express more of your truest self. Why? Because you can.
Hello, thank you for listening to this session. I hope you really thoroughly enjoyed listening to Donna. There will be a short question and answer session now, and you can write your questions in the chat section, and I will go ahead and forward them to Donna, and she can go ahead and answer them. And when you're through, if you want, you can head into the home page and watch a video from Mitch Garabedian, and that will also provide more information for you on that site. So Donna, I took down 2 questions here. One of them is, what is a licensed spiritual coach?
Yes, and I'll go ahead and give you some clarification on that in a minute. I just wanted to say again, I know I've mentioned this in the video, but I want each person who's listening to know that I am not saying that healing is simple or easy, or we can just use these techniques and everything will be all right. I was seeing in the comments a couple of things about triggers for people, you know, even decades later, how one thing can set us off and put us in that place of pain or spacing out. Deer in headlights was the comment one person made. And I understand this, and I'm not in any way wanting to disrespect anybody's healing process. Where I'm coming from is I feel like when we stay in our pain and suffering, when our life becomes around that, like that's the focus of our life, you know, everything was then stolen from us. I feel like the perpetrators really ultimately win when that happens, and that our very best move is to prove them wrong, to prove that we can have a good life, and that we can not only have outer success. Many people come to me who are extremely successful on the outer realm, you know, even managing big companies, etc. But if you're not happy inside, that's so much of the overall peace. You know, and having inner peace, having happiness. For me, myself, I had to give myself permission to be happy. I was very accomplished, graduated first in my class with my first degree that I did, you know, but wasn't happy inside. So what I'm saying is I feel like we really rise above what was done to us, whether it was when we were a child or when we were an adult. I know there were several comments about people who were abused as adults. And I still think that when you're in a vulnerable position and you are taken advantage of, you still need to go back and support that part of you that was taken advantage of, support and help to grow up, help to be nurtured and healed and move from that place of wounding into the greater potential of what you can be. And so circling back around, Dorothy, I know that was long-winded to get to your question that you were reading from the comments. You know, I am trained in traditional psychology and also depth psychology, DEPTH, the deeper psychology, Jungian, that kind of thing, Carl Jung. And that works a lot with the unconscious and also some of the mystical. And I love that about it because it's very relative to what we're talking about here today with abuse and religious settings, especially. Later on in life, I went on and became a licensed spiritual coach through a New Thought movement. And for me, that was a way for me to find a church that was different than the traditional churches, and really has been very meaningful to me and my healing process. So my licensing is through that church. It really is very much like a coach, you know, which is why with all of my experience, I call myself a master success coach, because I really help people to come into the fullness of their potential, and also to unveil or reveal parts of themselves that are their brilliance, their light. And so I hope that answers the question. If, you know what I should say here in case we run out of time is that if anyone has specific questions that you really want me to answer directly with you or get in a dialogue with you, I know that there are a couple of different ways to do that within the system. You can ask to connect, and then we can send messages back and forth to each other. And I think there's also a room to create a discussion. So if we run out of time, know that I will go to that room. What was the name of the church again? I'm not sure. Which church are you asking about, Patricia? I didn't mention any church.
Oh.
I do not mention the church that I was abused in. I don't feel that I want to do that. Oh, that licensed me. I'm licensed through CSL, which is Centers for Spiritual Living. And that is an international organization. It's about a 6-year training program in addition to my other education. And I also feel like when I'm acknowledging my background, I want to acknowledge that I also studied with indigenous healers through Native American, Peruvian, and Mayan traditions. And I feel that that work also very much works with seeing through the darkness, and seeing what is there, the great potential that is there. So I believe that our deepest wounds often become our greatest gifts when we develop them, or we meet the pain of them and we learn to help that, put salve on it. Sorry about my phone ringing. It was inevitable, wasn't it? I also got a delivery, which is why you saw me leave. I had big boxes delivered right in the middle of the video. It's crazy.
Donna, there's another question that somebody asked, and it was, can you please share some steps to neutralizing triggers?
Yes. Yes, and I see Linda Lee is asking how old I was when I was abused. It started when I was 6. I was a year ahead in school. I had gone to school early, and because of that, I was younger and being groomed for First Holy Communion when the first incident happened. It happened over a period of time. Now, I will tell you that I say it was 6, and my mother says it was 7. That was after she stopped telling me that it probably didn't happen. And she said, I think it was 7, not 6, because 7 was when you started getting really angry and your whole personality changed. And so I think it was when you were 7. And of course, as someone who works with people now, my thought was, well, when you have a child whose personality dramatically changes and they become very angry for all intents and purposes, without a reason, don't you dig more to try to find out what is going on? But it was a different time. So, and triggers, you know, that's interesting. And I know that came from Ashley. You know, I do a lot of work with triggers, and I think that a lot of times it really is individualized for each person who I work with, because the way in which we're triggered varies from person to person. But I can say that some general ideas are very similar to what Ashley was talking about in her intuition workshop. So I work with centering and meditation. I work with journaling and writing. In fact, my last book was on writing, rite of passage and healing through writing. You know, sometimes it's just being present to the fear and the anxiety and the difficulty that arises when the trigger is present, and just being with that, being with the experience of what happens, takes some of the steam out of it. So I want to acknowledge to all of you, I am absolutely triggered today. And it's interesting to me because I have done so much healing work, and I listen to people all the time and their difficulties, and it's fine. But this particular area, when I hear of other people and what happened to them, and it's so similar to what happened to me, that is very triggering. And if any of you didn't see that that beginning piece today, the introductory presentation, it was very moving. And I know Jeb, personally, he spoke, as well as the report from Colorado, the Attorney General, and it was just extremely well done. So that was what triggered me, was hearing Jeb and I believe Michael, I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the other gentleman's name. Anthony? Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, hearing their stories, my heart just could feel for them, their pain, which is the other thing within this kind of organization. It's wonderful, the work that's done, but sometimes that triggering is going to happen because not only is it my pain or your pain, but it's us feeling each other's pain. And the magnitude, I spoke of that in the video, the magnitude is astounding, you know, that there is so much pain and what has been done. And it seems so pointless. So like, why would anyone even want to do that to children or vulnerable adults? So again, to get back to how do I handle triggers? First is just being present with it, acknowledging it. Do you know, if you call it out and recognize that that's where you are, part of the energy is sucked right out of it. It loses some of its power over you. And then you can look at ways to go in and through it. And again, things like meditation or beautiful music, playing beautiful music when you get agitated or are experiencing some of the effects of the triggers. But we go after each trigger and we decompose the energy in it. And so, you know, we can work with that. The memories, okay. I'm just...
So this question is, how receptive is the mental health community to this type of spiritual healing versus a more traditional approach? For example, CBT, DBT, EMDR. Do you find a stigma, I guess, to what I'm asking? So it's the spiritual approach versus psychological.
Well, and I want to be clear, I am a licensed spiritual coach, but I do a lot of different work. I'm trained and have practiced for 30 years and teach and train teachers in the field of conscious energy work. I do healing work that I learned through these indigenous cultures, so shamanic healing work. I have a lot of tools within my my network of what I can do when I work with a person. And so in answer to that question, I just want to say that um, I'm not concerned with that.
Mhm.
So it's not important to me if any other professional approves or disapproves of what I'm doing. I actually sometimes work in conjunction with other professionals, usually within the medical community. I've helped people with healing, healing through cancer challenges, AIDS, um, different imbalances. In terms of psychology, I have training, you know, at least a master's degree in psychology, and I feel quite versed in that traditional approach. As far as some of these applications that you've spoken about, I'm not licensed or trained in them, but I do work with negotiating with the parts within a person. That's very powerful. Um, Not so much family systems. I appreciate that work. So I don't know if I've answered your question. To be honest, I just don't. There are plenty of clients and my practice is full. If someone is not attracted to what I have to offer, then my blessing is to hope they find the right person for them to work with. I just work with who's in front of me and how can my question, my prayer is how can I help this person? And I haven't spoken about this, but in experiencing my abuse, I felt like I really connected with my spiritual guidance. And so that is loud and clear. And I am often guided through the best way to work with a person. So part of it is intuitive. Part of it is listening to that guidance from within and asking questions of the person that I'm working with. Together, we find the best pathway, because this really isn't work that anyone, traditional or otherwise, is going to do for you. Any healing is self-healing, and so it's a collaborative venture between the client, the practitioner, and really, you know, the greater life, greater source, God, whatever you want to call it. It's a collaboration. And yes, the presentation is recorded, Susan. I did see that several of you came in after it was started. And so I think the whole thing is being recorded. So even our questions and discussion will be included there. I just want to check because I thought I saw a couple of other questions that were important.
Donna, I saw one somebody was asking about billing insurance for your services. I know some psychologists do accept insurance, some don't. In your practice, do you accept insurance?
And I don't have a staff. So it's me. And so I don't bill insurance. In the past, I've written letters when someone wanted to ask their insurance if they would cover a certain number of sessions, but that's different than what the person is asking about. Usually that's in regards to an accident or something like that, where the insurance will allow 10 sessions or 15 sessions according to the injury.
Okay.
And I wanna, let's see. This is such a huge topic and one that is so close to my heart that I just want to say, please, if you want to continue a dialogue with me, connect with me through the system and send me a note. Wherever you are in your healing, know that there is more. There's more to you. There's more you can do to grow from this place, whatever's tripping you up, whatever's painful for you. I hope you've given yourself permission to be happy and have a good life, have a successful life, and been able to move beyond that place of being immersed in the pain. I think of that quote by Rumi that talks about the crack letting the light in. And I also know the analogy that we often speak of with the lotus blooming through the mud. And I would just ask each of you to drop into your heart right now, to drop into your heart and feel that space there. And imagine that there's a lotus that's coming up through the mud in your heart. And you might just notice, is it open and blooming, or is it still a little bud? And if it's a little bud, you might have to give it some encouragement, some tender loving care, some nurturing, so that it can bloom into the fullness of its beauty. I want each one of you to know that you are blessed and you are also a blessing. And whatever happened to you, it's not the truth of who you are. There's so much more to you. And I wish you great, great success.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Let me look.
I'm going to just check my notes because I had a few things.
Oh, Donna, I did see somebody allude to a couple of little conversations up further about mentioning adults as well as children.
Yes.
And just how, and it ties in with your topic about, you know, the special challenges associated with clergy abuse and how it really does tap into our core.
Yes.
And that core is present across the span of the life. You know, there is no age limit for vulnerability. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I did mention earlier, regardless of how old you were when that happened, it typically happens in times of vulnerability. And so those same things occur where we think that it might, how should we have handled that differently? What did we do to bring that on? You know, we need to allow that to be on the person who was the perpetrator and come into a place of recognizing that that vulnerable or weak one who was you needs to be acknowledged and loved. You need to be able to love her or love him and help her heal or help him heal. Yeah, so I want to say it doesn't matter how old you are. It really doesn't. And in fact, it doesn't matter how old you get, those wounds don't go away. I said that in the video. You know, one of the people I worked with was an 86-year-old woman who had been abused by two of her brothers when she was 11. And I saw this elderly woman become a little girl in front of me. And we worked for 4 sessions. And during that time, she really moved from the place of this horrible secret that she had kept her whole life to this place of acceptance. And it was beautiful to witness. I feel honored to do this work and to witness the brave and incredible healing that people do. I believe that humans are so resilient. And
I think there's just a time for one more question. Do you work with families dealing with clergy abuse? And how do you help families understand the differences between clergy abuse and other types of abuse?
yes, and this has not been a big part of my work. Most of my work is done with individuals, but I have worked with some families. And I think part of that is working with each person individually, again, I would say, and what is coming up for them. Because as some of the things that I've shared about my own family, you know, people react in different ways, and we need to give people their space and their time to evolve through their process of healing. So sometimes people, cut off ties with family members. I know there was a comment about a friend who's no longer in somebody's life because she spoke her truth. You know, my hope is that that friend will come back around, because sometimes it's just too much for them to handle. So again, I would address each person where they are and then help the people as a unit. So it's almost kind of 4 different things, each of the 3 family members and then together.
Okay. Right. Looks like, oh, okay, looks like the time is up. It's 4:30 or
Oh,
5.
yes, it is. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone who came on, and I appreciate you. If you want to contact me directly, my business line is 303-271-0510, 303-271-0510. And you can contact me at donna@donnadenome.com or donna@wildsuccess4u.com. Thank
All right.
you, everyone.
Thank you for
Thank you.
excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.